we'll just share out the materials afterwards so that you can access what we're talking about today. So welcome everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, this is Sophia. I'm from East Bay. I'm joining in by phone since I don't think that website's loading.
Yes, we're having some problems. Laura says she's able to record. Thank you, Laura. Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone to the Slow Food USA call about fall campaigns. I'm Anna Muley. I'm the Executive Director of Slow Food USA as of May. So I'm excited to be past Slow Food Nations and join you all here as we talk about what's next after Slow Food Nations. It was really exciting to meet a lot of you at Slow Food Nations and connect in person. It's always good to get off the phone and off these glitchy calls and into a real live room and meeting people face to face. So thanks everyone for that. A little housekeeping just before we dive into the deck here. We've had some problems with the tech. I'm seeing reports, Megan, thank you, that the visuals are finally working after refreshing. So if you are on the screen, we do have a deck here to present the campaign, some graphs and other materials that will be helpful. So if you can refresh in the GoToMeeting link, and we will hope that works for everyone. Another housekeeping thing, if you are on the phone or on your computer, please mute yourself so we don't hear the background noise. It'll just make cleaner audio for everyone. And then if you have questions, you can go ahead and use the chat box if you're on the website. Feel free to put in questions as we go. You don't have to wait till the end to ask your questions, so we can keep questions as they're fresh in your mind. And then we'll also give time for callers and people on the phone to ask questions as well. So without further ado, this is, okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about campaigns in general and why we do campaigns. Campaigns, you know, I feel like we often work in isolation or in silos. Each chapter does their own activities, they have their own board, and chapters are a way for people to rally together under one call to action. So we want to present to the world a unified front, right? That we're not some fractured network of chapters and communities working in isolation, but we can come together and really row in the same direction. So that is the goal of these campaigns, to choose specific moments in time in the calendar where we can really come together, not as like an individual chapter, but as a national movement and even an international movement, and really emphasize the strength of the network, right? So to emphasize those voices who are doing really great local work, but connecting the dots to show that this is actually a national network and a national group of people that come together for good, clean, and fair food for all. Okay. So the big picture goals for the fall campaigns, I'm beginning to think about framing all our work actually by roots down, by branches up action, and by water and sun. So let me unpack that a little bit. The roots down action is really to develop the network, right? Who are the people in the network? How can we tell the slow food story by really amplifying the diverse voices from the network? How can we work to you know, strengthen the network and the leadership and the communities within the network, the chapters? That's the roots down, really strengthening the roots. Branches up is more about engaging the public. So these campaigns also offer tangible hooks for individuals and communities to engage with slow food. So we'll talk a little bit about the Eat Local Challenge or the World Food Day, ways to provide like calls to action beyond an individual chapter, of ways to come together and really declare this is slow food and this is a tangible way to engage with slow food. The water and sun, okay, we all need water and sun money. We need some funds to keep the roots and the branches healthy. So this is a really important thing that I think we don't often focus on as a volunteer-led organization, but I really want to think creatively together about how we can raise funds and how to keep that water and sun, keeping our plant healthy and active. So similar to previous year campaigns, we have the September membership drive. I'm just going to put a pin in this for now and come back to it later, where Giselle will walk us through in more detail the membership drive. But that will be the month of September. We'll have campaign kits available again, and I posted the chapter request kit on the Facebook group. We'll also put the link in here. But we are packing those kits up tomorrow, so I'd really love for everyone to submit your request so we know how many kits we need to send out, and so we can get them to you in time for September. Then October, in the past we've done an Eat Local Challenge. We're still figuring out and brainstorming with a group of people what exactly this will look like this year. The Eat Local Challenge in the past has been a more public-facing engagement campaign, less about fundraising and more about just talking about what slow food is and what it means. This year, we're considering partnering with the FAO and working with their World Food Day specifically, and that's October 16th. So there's some ideas about, do we do a poster competition with the school gardens to talk about, what does healthy eating and eating locally mean? These ideas are still getting worked out, so we'll just pause on that for a second. If you have ideas or projects that you're already working on for World Food Day, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. The last thing in December, so in December in the past, we've partnered closely with Slow Food International and done a real global campaign. 2 years ago is the Menu for Change campaign. It got changed to the Food for Change campaign. But this year, it's actually the 30th year anniversary of signing the Slow Food Manifesto, which is when slow food really internationalized and became an international grassroots network. So we want to think about, looking back at our 30 years, who are the voices that have really pushed slow food forward and how have we really developed as a network? And then turning forward, what are the next 30 years for us? How can we continue to engage the network and be creative and push the food movement towards new opportunities and new positionings? So again, those details are a little loose, but they're coming together. The main call to action for chapters is to create an event to mark the 30th year anniversary sometime between December 1st and 10th. So December 10th is Terra Madre Day. A lot of you have participated and done some event with Terra Madre Day in the past. And we'd like to just rally around this 30 years of slow food and think about how we activate that locally. So again, I'm really open to comments and suggestions and ways to do both roots down, really network oriented activities, and branches up. How do we get new people into our chapters as well? So in all of these campaigns, we want to think about the messaging and what the call to action is, right? We want to tell the story of who we are, who is slow food, who are the people, what are the goals of the people in the networks, what we do, if we can dig into school gardens and Arc of Taste and all those great national working groups and themes that emerge from the network. Why is this important? And we can point here towards topics of climate change and equity, inclusion, and justice. Why is this relevant today? Then we want to get specifically into how can people support slow food financially, with their time, with their resources. How can they actually get engaged on an individual level? So I want to introduce Giselle Kennedy Lord. She's been with Slow Food USA for since what, Giselle, November now, I think. She's a really dynamic communications storyteller, real expert in photography and visual storytelling, and she's been managing our social media. She's going to take the lead on this membership drive presentation here and going through the details of the drive. So I will turn it over to you, Giselle.
Excellent, thanks, Anna. We're excited about this drive, Anna and I, to sort of reinvigorate our membership and get all of the chapters really involved in bolstering our membership. The theme of this drive is become a member. It's very straightforward. We want it to be straightforward and clear and simple, and let the storytelling and content around it be based on what it is that you do and what your sort of slow food approach is. So in this slide, you'll see simple but pretty hardline goals to recruit 1,000 new members. And we're also trying to focus on memberships that have lapsed, renewing. So we'll be doing some direct outreach to them. We want to reach both people who don't have slow food in their lives yet and people who did that may be interested in returning. Another thing we want to understand both for this year and next year is why people are joining or why they are renewing or not. So when people become a member online, they will go through the whole membership workflow form and then be sent back to a question, which is why did you become a member? In the email asking us to renew the membership, we will link to a question of why are you choosing not to renew the membership so that we can start to understand what motivates people. And then another goal is 80% chapter engagement, that you all will be heavily involved in telling the story and recruiting membership for this campaign, which will run from September 1 to 30. Of course, recruiting members is always a good thing, but September we just go big. So our strategy is outlined below in fairly general terms. So of course the chapter engagement and the campaign kits, those are free to you. And so like Anna said, we encourage you to request those kits online. There are links, we have links at the end of this slide set and we will send those out in email so you can actually click on them. Can't click on them here. So the kits contain all those things, and we have a little how-to sheet of suggestions on how to use your kits and what materials are available to you. Quick reminder for those of you out there who have not yet muted yourselves, could you please mute yourself? I'm hearing that it might be a little hard to hear me. Of course, I can hear me, but it sounds like maybe some of you can't. Let me know. So, of course, the Give What You Can Day is an important part of the membership drive, and in the past, Give What You Can Day has happened in the middle of the drive. But this year, we are going to bump it up to the very beginning in an attempt to avoid people sort of waiting that day. So if Give What You Can is what is available to a person and what they're motivated to do, we want that to sort of be the thing that kicks off the drive. So, of course, our membership drive starts at the beginning of September, which is the 1st, which is a Sunday. So we're going to do this Give What You Can Day on the 2nd, which is Day, and tie it into the day. We had a very successful Give What You Can Day on Earth Day, so we like the tie to big events or big important days in the country, and I think that this will get people to jump on Give What You Can Day if that's their intention, and then we can just roll right into general membership recruitment. So our storytelling for the membership campaign, I would like to be very focused on what our chapters do, what the work we do as a grassroots community is, and what makes it unique and what makes it important. So in order to gather that content in a translatable way, we've set up a form. Another one of those links at the end, there's a form for content submission. So the idea is that all of you chapters, there's been such amazing things happening that I tend to catch wind of on social media. So DC is part of a really cool dinner program. So East Bay did a refugee and immigrant dinner series that's fantastic. And all of these things we want to communicate to the national community and network. So I'm asking that you use that form. It's really simple. It's your name, your chapter, and an opportunity to upload photos and then give me the blurb, essentially, a story blurb. And something happened to our slides and they seem to have gone white on us.
Is that better?
Here we go, perfect.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, that's okay. So, and we encourage you in your storytelling. My take on this is that the call to become a member, it lands best with real world work that's happening and the impact of that work. So on your own platforms and in your own chapter universes, we encourage you to tell your story that way. Talk about the things that you do. If you have a really vibrant school garden programs, in your area, great, tell that story. If you're doing dinners like the refugee and immigrant dinner, tell that story. So we want to encourage you to tell your story fairly specifically. We as a large community can tell the story of good, clean, and fair food for all, but it lands much better if it's specific. So what about it? What is the food justice work that you're doing? What is the school garden work that you're doing? And moving on to the next line item is direct outreach. So in sort of a week or two into the campaign, we're going to send emails out to all of the folks whose memberships have lapsed in the last 2 years. We're just going to hit the last 2 years with messaging about why it's important to be a membership of Slow Food and an invitation to return or renew their membership. Same thing for our supporters, which is actually can be a fairly robust portion of our membership, and so we're going to do the same thing with them, direct outreach to renew, and with the support of Sherry Steiner, who some of you have met through Slow Food Nations, we're really sort of reworking the business supporter program so that it's very clear of how to be a part of it and why to be a part of it. And then I kind of already mentioned the focus on chapter work and stories, and also the focus on the diversity of your community. So I also encourage you to tell the story of members of your community who are unique and interesting and doing really impactful work. So all of that, I also want to let you know that we are launching a new website at the end of this month. So this membership campaign will launch with a bright and shiny and clean and up-to-date website. It looks like it was made. So that we're working very hard on that website now. So that will launch at the end of the month, and the Become a Member page is going to sort of be front and center there in this first phase of the website launch. And then from here, we will start to add content like School Gardens, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice, our community stuff. So if you don't see that stuff on the website right away at the end of the month, please know that our focus right now is the platforms and pages for membership and general slow food information and resources, and then we'll move on to that. So that's the drive, that's our strategy for the drive and where you fit in. The next slide is really just a very simple picture of becoming a member. So the elevator pitch of membership at the top there, and then our membership types. The first two membership types have existed for a long time. They'll stay the same, the standard individual at $60 and the family at $100. The family includes 2 adults and children. Of course, families come in many shapes, sizes, and formations, and we welcome all of them. Sliding scale is basically just a different thing to call, what did we call it before? I can't remember now.
We call it limited resources.
So this would
student membership.
A name your membership price, but the minimum is $30. We want to make it accessible for students and people with limited resources, but also leave open the spectrum. So if somebody wants to come in at a $45 level because that's what feels available to them, then great. That's that membership that they'll go into. If somebody wants to do a standard individual membership for $200, fantastic. They can put it in there. So the impetus to change that to sliding scale was to invite people to come somewhere between 30 and 60, but also over 60. And if you have a lot of students in your network or you have low-income individuals in your network, then this is a good place for them. Just a couple numbers for Slow Food in the USA. We have 150 chapters. We currently have 3,370 members, and we have 355 Arc of Taste entries. Of course, those Arc of Taste entries are products and processes and foods that can be found in the United States. Most of them have a connection to somewhere else in the world. So those are kind of our quick and dirty numbers and membership types. In addition, let's put that on here. In addition to these membership types for individuals, of course, we have the business supporter membership, and then just a standard donation. If somebody doesn't want the bells and whistles of membership, they can just make a donation for essentially whatever amount they want, and that's that. And on the Become a Member landing page, people will find these 3 memberships and then big old links to those other 2, so the business supporter and the standard donate page. Within the business supporter membership, we have 3 levels. Cool. Next slide is content and delivery. So this is essentially, this is kind of my lane of what I'll be putting out there during September and for the membership drive. Last year I came in right at this time, or sort of after this time, and I sort of tapped into the idea of breaking this up like good, clean, fair, and for all, which I think is just a nice framework for us to put all this stuff in. We're gonna jump to the second thing. This video, what does slow food mean to you, is going to do my very best. I have asked a handful of people involved with essentially while at Slow Food Nation. So a few of our snail blazers, a couple of whom are on this call right now, and a few people who were involved as talent in Slow Food Nations. The reason I like to ask this question is because I think it means different things to different people, with the foundational beliefs being the same of good, clean, and fair food for all. But some of you are involved in the justice piece, some of you are involved with the gardens piece, some chefs, some farmers, some producers. So I'd like to cut together a very short video of a few people answering that question. And then social media, of course, is all things and imagery driven. So one note in your content and story submissions, when you send me that content, please do your best to send high resolution photographs. I can always touch them up, but if they're tiny little photos, they're not usable. So that's helpful. So if you have a photographer or somebody with a good camera at your event, just ask them for the photos and send them my way. So week 1 we'll focus on the good piece, week 2 we'll focus on clean, week 3 fair, week 4 for all. It's basically inclusivity. And this meaning that once I get these stories from you, I'll start to highlight stories and basically they'll fall into one of these 3 things. And then I have sent requests to the chefs in this list to send a recipe my way so that we can pass those on to new members. Essentially the way this would work is that you sign up to become a member and then you're taken to a new web page with a link to download a PDF of one of these recipes. The idea behind this recipe booklet is that each of these recipes tells a story related to slow food and what slow food is and why it's important. So you can see there how those sort of break down. There is a longer list in existence, the idea being that we'll kind of publish a full e-booklet at the end of the year. These are the folks I've reached out to who have, almost all of them have, like all but one have enthusiastically responded and very, very happy to send along recipes. So I think this is a really nice way to, people love free recipes online. So this is a great way to just tap into that and a community of people that I think is our target audience. And then we have an email, we have our email newsletter. Of course, we'll have content in that. We might do more than one in the month next month to just kind of keep that conversation and keep this call to action at the top of people's inboxes. And then of course the direct outreach that I mentioned to LAPS members and business supporters. So, let's see next. I think that's the general, I hope that's a simple and general way to understand our strategy for content and storytelling. Of course, it's my job, but I think storytelling is extremely important for an organization like this because that is what people relate to or what resonates with them and then pushes them to the next step of supporting and becoming a member. So tell your story, guys. Tell everybody all the good work that you're doing. Be specific about it. And if you want, if it speaks to you, maybe follow that same framework of week 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that across all of our chapters and platforms, there's sort of this running theme or focus, or not. Let's see what the next slide is.
Thanks, Giselle. I think that's this. We're going to get into some nitty gritty next, but anything else with content you wanted to highlight?
I don't think so. I'm definitely open. Obviously, I've invited you many times to share the stories. I really would love to have those from you, and also open to anything you might want to point to. So if you know of a chapter that's doing something great, or just something generally great that's happening or important, go ahead and point me there. We'll include my email address in the follow-up to this call. Okay, done now.
Perfect. Thank you, Giselle. We can come back to this. If you guys have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat box. Questions or ideas, we'd love to hear your your feedback and brainstorm about what content is compelling to members in your region. So you go ahead and you can put that in the chat, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. But I wanted to dig into some of the finances here, and like more internally, why membership is important for Slow Food USA and for chapters. So you can see here a graph. I'm sorry, a lot of you are on the call and can't see this graph, but we'll share it later. A graph of our membership trends over the last, since 2002, basically. You can see that there's a, we started around 5,000 members back in 2002, and we peaked around 19,000 members around 2010. That number is now back down towards 35 or 4,000 members. So we're losing membership, at approximately a rate of 1,000 members a year, which is a figure to notice, and something that we want to stop that trend. I don't know if we're gonna turn it back to necessarily to 20,000 members. We could get there, but at least we want to stop the downward trend of losing memberships. So I just want to really encourage chapters to participate in the campaign this year, and just to understand why we're set up in this structure and why you're raising money for the Slow Food USA entity is important and helpful. So just to be clear, with the Slow Food USA, this entity raises about $225,000 annually from memberships from the chapters. Now, we give back about between $110,000 to $175,000 to Slow Food International every year. So that's about half of the membership revenue that we are getting in. That money is really important to support the global work, right? So we're supporting the coordinators in the Slow Food International office, but we're also supporting the school gardens and the 10,000 Gardens in Africa project, the Ark of Taste, Slow Fish, policy work around the world. So this is kind of like what ties us into the international community. Materials for chapters and members. This is, printing the magazine, getting people all on the same page with communication, sending out membership kits so that you have promotional materials to hand out to members in your communities. Of course, we have financial services and state registration fees. I'm sorry, this is, I'm reading, maybe I should read more because a lot of people are on the phone, but so materials for chapters and members, it's about 60,000 annually for us. Financial services around 42,000. State registration fees is 10,000 to actually go through the process of registering chapters with the states. Chapter reports and database management is roughly $10,000. So the picture I want to paint here is that Slow Food USA is not profiting off of the membership that chapters bring in. And in fact, the revenue that you bring into Slow Food USA is really important to keep this network going, both the international network and the work that we do around the world, but also the coordination that we do in this office, and keeping between state registration fees and financial services and promotion, just keeping the wheels going. So I am happy to answer any questions related to this. I don't think we've been super transparent necessarily in the past, but I just wanted to be really clear on what membership money supports, why it's really important for chapters to support, to rally around membership. Going to the next slide. So, if we think about our overall goal is to increase by 1,000 members in September. If we broke that down by chapter, that's about, if every chapter could gain 7 members, we would be at our goal. And I think that's a super attainable reach. We want to think about, of course, there's differences between big chapters and small chapters. So big chapters, could you grow by 30 members? Okay, small chapters, could you grow by 5 members? I think we can each identify a very attainable goal that works for our chapter, that if we work together and pull together in this direction, we can easily reach our goal and kind of maintain the level of membership and energy in our network. So I'd really encourage you to go back to your boards, and even you as chapter leaders, to think like, what is your number for your chapter that is a good goal that your chapter can rally around. And we were talking with some leaders the other day about, you know, giving you better data points so you can measure how successful your chapter is doing during the drive. So we can definitely do that. Maybe each week we'll send you a report of how many members you've gained through your efforts. I think the easiest place to start is looking at the lapsed members, and you all should have a list of the expired members in your chapter in that monthly chapter report that we send out. The next chapter report will go out at the end of the month, end of August, so you can look at the contact information of those lapsed members and see if you can do some direct outreach to figure out, you know, why aren't they a current member, and would they come back and really help support your chapter specifically. And you can point to, you know, the membership money supports the international work, it supports the national work, it ties a whole movement together. So I have a breakdown by region. I actually prepared a spreadsheet that shows the numbers of current and lapsed members of each chapter, and I can make that available. Giselle, maybe you could put the link to this Excel sheet in the chat box so people can look through it. But here I also broke down the numbers by region. So the Northeast, Southeast, Great Plains, Rocky Mountains, Southwest, and Pacific Rim. You know, what are the numbers, your current membership numbers, and then the lapsed membership numbers. Okay, Giselle, back to you. Do you want to just talk about this last slide? Giselle, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, perfect.
So here's a few important links again. We'll send you a PDF so you can click on these. And I added the requested to this slide, so that'll be the PDF. I think that the requested campaign kit should be the first step of the digital toolkit is a work in progress, but it contains photos, it will contain graphics to use on your social media platforms, as well as some captions and other info that will make it nice and easy for you to copy. And then just essential info and that link page to for the campaign kit, and just a few other things that we think are useful for you to promote the membership drive in September. The Become a Member landing page, of course, that link is going to change once the website goes live, so we'll send that to you in email as soon as it is live. And then this form link at the bottom, that's where you will go to share content. Both a write-up and I'm gonna bring back to a couple of questions from the chat. One is the benefits of membership. I missed that. We have touched on when talking about the membership type. So the tangible benefits for membership: standard individual membership gets the Slow magazine. It's an annual magazine, and then also discounts on slow food events. Generally, those are the two most tangible, most consistent benefit memberships. And plus, a connection to the network. This connection to the network over and over, I keep hearing, is the most valuable thing of becoming a member. Maybe you're a chef, or maybe just a conscious eater, and connecting with the people in the chapter, so on and so forth. I think that we, in pitching the benefits of membership, have to sort of combine the public radio style of real support is what this membership is about. And that's why the storytelling around why you should be so important, because that is likely to be the major motivator. And the magazine is really nice. I think we've seen this year's turned out really nice. So that, of course, is a great thing to get. And then discounts to events. Like every Slow Food Nations event is discounted for members, and every chapter events are also discounted for members. I think that's really valuable. The family, it's the same thing. You just get 2 of all the things. And then the sliding scale, limited resources, I think it's a digital copy of the magazine. So it's all the same benefits. And then Megan asked about resources and tips on, I actually love this question because was such a struggle in Denver on communicating how to talk about slow food to new members and even existing members. The Slow Food Nations team calls the slow foods habit the whole foods effect, because we can't think of any other reason why you might use the word foods so regularly. But it's very real. We have lots of people within our own network who say slow foods, so many people at Slow Food Nations. So I will work on that. I love that question, and I will add something to the digital toolkit after some brainstorming on how to best communicate and really get it in there that it's slow food and not slow foods. Please do your best to communicate that to people. I don't think it's inappropriate to correct people gently and kindly and with gratitude for their support. But it is important so that we have consistent branding and naming, because it's a global organization. So thanks for that question. I might let Anna touch on the other questions a little out of my department.
Sure. Amanda is asking what was done in 2010 to get so many members. This is before my time, so I would love to hear from anyone on the call who might have more of the historical knowledge of 2010. Is anyone here? Julie, I don't know. I think I saw you come on. I also think there's a possibility this is also when our database got changed. So I wouldn't necessarily think that's exactly corresponds to new memberships, but I don't have a great answer for that. When did Slow Food USA stop returning money to chapters, and how did that affect the overall budget? That question from Lisa Frank. Thank you, Lisa. So I believe, and maybe Ian can jump in here too, but I believe that the Slow Food USA returned money to chapters for only a short period of time, actually, and that was a very small percentage of membership money. And so that stopped when we changed. Ian, when did this stop exactly? 2014, that stopped, and that moved when we changed. Sorry, I'm just asking Ian. Can you, right, okay, so that corresponded with our strategic direction change, and then we also passed the national statute in 2017. That, Megan is asking how far back are the lapsed members counted for? This is all time. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get a better annual glimpse at the trends per chapter. But Megan, the lapse is all time, basically. Bob is asking, Slow Food USA has set the annual dues amount too high. Our chapter competes for members with other nonprofits which have similar goals but don't have a membership fee. $60 is too high compared to $0. It's also difficult for a chapter to campaign for additional members when we don't get any portion of their membership fees. So Bob, this is an interesting question that comes up. I think this is one reason that we're doing the sliding scale for membership, and also Give What You Can days, so that there are other opportunities to become a member that's not a $60 membership. So I understand that concern. And you say it's difficult for a chapter to campaign for additional members when we don't get any portion. And I hope to, maybe I can just slide back to our other slide of why membership is important to keep us all working together, so that, you know, the benefits back to the local chapter are not hard cash, but we do, you know, we're part of a global movement, and that movement does take funding in terms of, you know, state registration fees. The USA office does that. You have the ability to use the Slow Food logo. That's a very tangible benefit that you are getting. We provide those chapter reports in the database. We give you materials and promotional items. And, you know, using the Slow Food logo really puts you into the Slow Food international family, so that you have these connections internationally across the globe. So I hope that chapters can start to understand a little more tangibly the support that you're getting for that membership money and why it's important to support both the international and the national through these membership dollars. I'm happy to unpack that a little more. We can have another call or just email me individually if you'd like to. Gwen says, I think 2010 might have been a bump from the 2008 Slow Food Nation event. It's a good thought. I'm not sure. Not sure about that. And Gwen says, I always tell people their membership dues support an international network with a local focus. Exactly. Okay, I want to be sure to leave time for other questions as well as to turn this over to Ed as he'll talk about the child nutrition reauthorization priorities coming up for the policy committee and how this affects the network. But please continue to put in your questions in the chat box, or you can shoot me an email directly. My email is Anna, A-N-N-A, @slowfoodusa.org. So happy to go into more depth on any of these questions. But really, really hope that the chapters in the network will rally around the membership drive this year so that we can hit a good 80% of chapter engagement participating in the membership drive would be really exciting, and to grow the membership so we can turn this trend around. Okay, Ed, can I turn it over to you? And I think I'm going to have to unmute everyone for a second. Ian, can you help me with this? Because I think Ed called in. We have to find Ed. Which caller ID?
I called in.
Okay, there you are, Ed. Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say the 2010 bump, I think, had something to do with our campaign at the time, which we called Time for Lunch, which had to do with our support for the child nutrition reauthorization, which became the 2010 Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, which was historic. But in government, in federal government, in law, there are about 3 pieces of legislation that are cyclical. In other words, they come around every 5 years, sometimes a little longer. It's the Farm Bill, which I think you all know about because we just went through one. And the second big one is the Child Nutrition Reauthorization. And it's much delayed. It should have been done in 2015-16, but we had, if you remember, a Republican House of Representatives and a Republican Senate. The Senate was much more reasonable, but the House version of the bill was so bad, the differences could not be reconciled. And advocates like us and others decided it was probably a good thing just not to have the bill on time, on schedule, because it might have been a disaster. So now we've got a Democratic House of Representatives, and we've got a still sort of reasonable Senate. So lo and behold, the child nutrition reauthorization is coming around again. And this being Congress is in recess, staff here is back in Washington working diligently on trying to put together a reauthorization. So the timeliness is good for us to weigh in with our values. And Cynthia, are you on the call?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can. Can everybody else hear Cynthia? Oh, okay.
Thumbs up.
Well,
Yep.
I hope. Okay, good. So we're all on board then. So if you have time, you could go to the policy page on the Slow Food USA website, and you will see. Actually, you go to the blog post. There's a blog post about the CNR, which has a link to a letter that Anna sent to congressional leaders about Slow Food USA suggestions, priorities for the new child nutrition reauthorization, which is basically restore what was taken away by the last Congress and by this president, put it back in the legislation. And we just want more good food for more kids. It's pretty simple. I mean, it turns out to be 5 pages, but basically that's it. But Cynthia is of School Gardens, is also a member of the policy committee, as is another child nutrition and hunger expert who's not on the call, couldn't be on the call. And we looked at our, several pages of fine print priorities, and there were three that just so stood out as being so slow. And they basically have to do with the amount of time the kids have to eat lunch. And that's one of the reasons they're not eating lunch. In some school districts and around the country, kids actually have 11 minutes to eat lunch, which means they're not eating lunch and they're wasting a lot of good food. So we decided to take those on. And Cynthia, with her, is a teacher, and with that experience, and also with her dedication to school gardens, had some suggestions. So we put them into our long list of priorities, but we also want to focus on these as more time for lunch, and we're sort of embarked on a little campaign along those lines. But Cynthia, could you walk folks through the points and more time for lunch?
Sure, yeah, and I think everybody knows here in last December, Purdue downplayed the standards, lowered the standards, and what we found out that the standards that Michelle Obama put in actually improved the nutrition. So, and obviously I have a great interest, this is a sad story. I hope there's a good ending, so I'm going to tell a quick story because I know we're limited here on time, but basically what we propose to the USDA is to look at best practices, do a survey, let's look at school recess, let's look at lunch period scheduling and how long it takes for kids to get to lunch, leave lunch, all that type of thing. Let's talk about linking lunch with academic achievement. As I had said, I've been an educator for over 21 years, school gardens for 15. We need to get that link from school gardens, from the curriculum, also to good nutrition during lunchtime. We need to strengthen the school wellness policies and get all those members involved and say, longer school lunch needs to be in the wellness policy. And we're talking about at least 20 minutes. And it's important to note that that's where they're sitting down and actually eating lunch. It's not getting to the lunchroom. It's not getting settled, not talking to their friends, whatever it is. It is actual time, because we all know that if you sit down with a teenager and they have 10 minutes to eat, they're going to eat the sugary, salty things, the processed things first. They're going to leave the fruits, the vegetables, the other items that are nutritious. That could very well be going into the trash can. So we also need to provide grants, technical assistance to make sure that low-income, underserved communities, including tribal communities, are supported by things like a resource is, and I said this at Slow Food Nations, a district-wide school garden coordinator to empower students to make good food choices, to reject the sugar, the salt, and say, well, hey, I've got math and science later this afternoon. I better be eating this nutrition food to fuel my brain. And then we need to look at scratch cooking. We need to look at the food service infrastructure. We need to look at the kitchen. We need to get that flow of students through school choices quicker so that they can sit down and enjoy, I'm saying enjoy a made from scratch meal that is not processed, and they can find joy again in eating food with their friends. I think that is about it, but I think the one last thing that I want to say is that when, this all links to membership. What do we do? School gardens, school food policies, nutrition for our youth. Kids, it's all about our youth, snail kids. So this is something we can all start talking about. And Anna and I were on a call, Kim Amen were on a call for School Garden Network. Here is our opportunity to really take things like Penny Schwartz. I know you're on the call. Amazing things. We got to tell these stories through and gain membership at our events and say, this is what we do. And this is where your membership dues go to.
Could I add just a couple things? When we talked about this when there was the 2015 child nutrition reauthorization that didn't happen because of the disagreements between the two houses. This issue wasn't really on people's radar, and it got lost in the shuffle anyway because there wasn't a bill. But when we started to update our requirements, and we what we noticed is that since that time, since 2010, and the gradual implementation of the Michelle Obama more fruits, more vegetables, less salt, all those good things. People have started to do studies, and they are finding a positive relationship between the amount of time. There are a number of factors, but this is probably the most important one. There's a positive correlation between kids eating their food and having time to actually eat their food. And the USDA did a report supporting the effects of Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act on kids, picking the right things because it's more attractive and it tastes better. But we're still left with the problem with kids not eating. So 10 states in the union and Washington, D.C. actually passed laws that said their school districts had to provide, quote, adequate time to eat, unquote. And in some jurisdictions, they actually specify a time, mostly not. But in every one of those, because it was raised up locally or in the state and locally, it actually had an effect. And those districts tend to be doing better than the other 50 states. No, the other 40 states. So what we're saying is, this is not earth-shattering. There are people who are making it work better than other people are making it work. So we just thought it was time to beat the drum. And what we've done is we asked our governors in states where there are key legislators. So I'm talking about senators and representatives who are on the committees of jurisdiction, which in the Senate is the Ag Committee, and in the House is the Ed Committee. We've asked our governors to contact them with the message that Cynthia just recounted to you. And I think we just started this, and we'll see how it goes. And we may be coming to you in the network with possibly a call to action to get mass input to the extent we can, mass input to legislators, but we're going to sort of be playing it by ear as circumstances arise. We're also going to reach out to a couple of organizations, other not-for-profit organizations, who are also embracing this. So see if we can sort of get our communal act together to speak with one voice on this issue. So I think it's important, and I think if there is one thing that is a slow food issue, I think it's got to be more time for lunch. So we'll be calling you. We'll be talking to you.
Yes, Ed, thank you very much for all your work on this very, very important issue. And I think that we should make this letter for more time for lunch available to more members if we can. This could be something that chapters could make available. I mean, the more voices that are heard, the better. I as a newbie to the policy, I'm looking for scripts how I would talk to a congressperson or a senator. I think those are some of the resources we can provide to chapters to help, get members involved in something that might be dear to their heart. And it could, it would be very meaningful in terms of school gardens as well.
If you got the time, we could do that.
Great. Let's keep talking about that for sure. I think
Okay.
we have we're a little over, but we started late. If there's any questions, just type them in the chat box, or you could go ahead and ask them on the phone now here for Ed and Cynthia. Penny says this is
Oh
an
gosh,
important issue. I'd love to
I
have
just
that
have
letter.
to say,
Okay.
yeah,
I've got to. This is
great.
I've got to leave, but you all continue,
Okay.
and I'll catch up later.
Okay.
And I'll just respond really quickly to Jody. This is exactly what I'd like to work on, is some type of resource toolkit to administrators. I've been in the trenches for many, many years in both school garden, school food policy, school lunch. I've been fighting this. I do see that this is such a ripe opportunity. So we really have to fill in these gaps. So Jody, I think you're bringing up an amazing point, and this is something we need, and this is exactly how we start the conversation.
Thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate your leadership in this with Ed, and we can definitely keep talking about this. As Ed said, there's a bunch of resources now on the Slow Food USA website, so you can learn more, and I think we'll be continuing to work on these issues and how chapters and states can get involved. Okay, thanks everyone. This is a great call. We will be in touch with more information about the membership drive. We'll send out the deck and the recording and these other resources, but really appreciate everyone rallying around this membership drive this September and working together for good, clean, and fair.
Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, everyone.